This is an oral history interview with Mrs. Arthur Stomberg by Maureen McQuaid, conducted on April 11th, 1984, at 157 Lincoln Street, Newton, Highlands, Massachusetts. This interview is conducted as part of the oral history project of the Newton Public Libraries. The general subject areas we will be covering include working and life between 1920 and 1950.
I graduated from BU at 44, and I went to work for a small research laboratory over in Newtonville, the ARA Laboratories, which is now a Ford Motor Company, I think, or a motor company of some sort. They keep going in and out. It was in that building, and it was at that time.
So you weren't born here, right? No. Now, where did you come from?
Well, my father being in government service, we traveled a lot. I was born in San Francisco, but only was there for a very short time when we went to the Hawaiian Islands. I was there for a short time. We were in New York, and then Washington, D.C., Miami, New Orleans. And from New Orleans, we came here. He was assigned here at the U.S. Marine Hospital as a public health doctor. So we came here in 41, actually. I lived in a little house on the other side, the south side of Route 9, for a year. And in those days, the housing was all vacant. I bet there were dozens of vacant houses, particularly big ones like this, because we weren't really out of the Depression yet in 41. And a lot of these big houses people just couldn't buy, just couldn't afford them. And so they bought it very reasonably in 1942.
So how old were you when you moved here?
Well, let's see. In 1942, I was in college, and I guess I would have been, let me see, 19. 19 when we moved. I was 18 when we moved to the Highlands, and 19 when we moved in this house.
Did you notice anything about the Highlands in particular? Like, you know how there are several neighborhoods in Newton? Was Newton Highlands a very close community? Did you happen to notice?
We found it a very friendly place. It's very heterogeneous, very mixed. You have people of all different incomes, and we liked that. We liked the fact that it was a village, and that you did get to know your neighbors, and that people helped one another. There was still a back door borrowing a cup of sugar sort of thing going on in Newton. It still is. Still is. It's still very much what I like about it. And I guess I thought that was so in all the villages. I think it's not as much so in all villages as it is here. But I still think the village concept does promote that friendly feeling. Get less lost in the system.
Do you remember what the major businesses or industries were in Newton?
Newton Highlands, or even Newton itself, except Newton Highlands certainly didn't have much of any industry. There were little stores. The nearest industry that we knew of course, was Upper Falls, and there were textile mills there, and paper mills, I guess, too. That was what we considered industrial Newton, was Upper Falls at that point. Lower Falls had industry also, but didn't seem to be as much as Upper Falls, because all those mill buildings were very, very busy in those days.
So it was mostly just a corner store?
Yes, this was mostly a commuting area where people lived, got on the steam train. We had, there was actually a full-fledged train station down here at Elliott with a station master and a potbelly stove and everything. And we took a steam train, and I went to BU on the steam train because you got off at the Back Bay station to the old campus of BU. And there was a group of us, and we used to play bridge on our way to school and that sort of thing. Always the same people.
That's nice. So there wasn't any big company in town that everybody worked for?
No, that just wasn't so. It was a commuting place. People worked all over the place.
And so then most people did work out of town?
Yes. Most people worked in town, actually, in Boston.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right. Okay. And you said there were a lot of different kinds of people here, different incomes and all that.
Right.
So it wasn't an exclusive neighborhood
No, not at all.
salary-wise. You didn't have to be rich, sort of, to live here.
No,
You could.
no, you really didn't. There were still some of the old wealthy families still did live in the area, but it was becoming more and more of upper middle class and down from there. I don't think we had too many very, very poor people, but we had some who weren't that well off, though. It's always hard to judge how poor a person is.
Yeah, true.
But I know that there were plenty who weren't doing all that well. A few of the big houses were still in the hands of people of wealth, but it was the very ends of the big money house in this particular area.
And now it's mostly middle class.
Middle and upper middle. We have a lot of professional people. We have doctors. We have professors in universities. We have people who work in hospitals and various other. My husband's a hospital administrator. But then you go down from that to my neighbors who are Sicilian, and he was a house painter. And my neighbors in the house that we had before came to live here, which was we lived on Forest Street when we got married. This is my folks' home. And our neighbor there was a lawyer on one side, a parole officer on the other. Just a very nice mix. And we all did everything together.
And even back in the 40s, it was like that.
Yeah.
A lot of different occupations. And your father was a doctor.
Yes, the public health service.
And where did he work?
Well, he worked at the Marine Hospital while we were here.
Did he commute from here to there?
Yes, he used the train.
Did your mother work?
No, not when we were here. She was a nurse by training, but by this time was a housewife.
And that was during the time of World War I, right, that you were here?
Two.
Sorry, yes,
Yes, that's when we came. Actually, we came here in June of 41, and I went back to Tulane University, which is where I was going then, and war was declared that fall. And so we really came here just about right at the beginning of World War II.
And did that have a big effect on the businesses? Like, did a lot of men go off to war?
Oh, indeed. I'm sure it's why I had my job right out of college. Yes, they did. That's why my college education was expedited, because they were using college campuses to train the boys in the service, particularly science. I was a science major. And so they wanted you to get out of college just about as fast as you could go. So actually in my senior year, I only took one term of that year. And I worked as a lab instructor, because the instructors traditionally were your grad students, and they were all in industry. The colleges were suffering a loss of all their young instructor type people, all the fellows who they would use to do the grading of papers and so lab instruction. So the seniors were quickly recruited to do those jobs in the colleges, and so I graduated quite a bit earlier than I should have. And went into a job right away in this testing laboratory, which I'm sure wouldn't have been open for.
So your mother didn't go back to work because of the war?
No, she didn't.
She just stayed home.
I think that she felt that she was a little bit over age and grade at that time. They were getting up in years a bit by then.
And you were talking about the steam trains going into work, to school on that. Most people used.
Yes, they certainly did.
That was like the T is now. So
yes, same tracks, of course, so it's the same pathway, and it took you down. Well, just about any place you wanted to go. We could get off at Back Bay, which would take you around the Copy Square area, which is where I got off to go to school. Or it took you to South Station, and all the men who worked downtown got off at South Station. To drive your car was fairly easy in those days, except that so soon we were on gas rationing. And of course that precluded you taking your car. But, I mean, there weren't so many cars in the road, and it wasn't so difficult. And downtown didn't look anything like what it does now. It's got all. In those days when we first came here, I came with my father. He was to report to work, and I was driving my little Chevrolet. And we drove down the Route 9, heading towards town, looking for the customs house. That's where he was to report. There was an office at the custom building that he was to report to. And we stopped at a Texaco station, which still exists, just about as you're coming into Brookline, to ask them where the custom house was. And he said, look, right straight ahead of you, the tallest building you see there, that's the customs house. And it just stood out like a beacon. It was the tall building in Boston. So as you came down the hills, down into Brookline, you could see it standing up in the city. Mm-hmm. Of course, you realize you can't even see the custom building, and it's totally covered with all the others now. But it was the only high-rise, because they were still feeling in those days that you could not build on the swampy earth here. But now they just put pilings down deep and build them anyway. So.
Has there been a lot of growth in Newton Highlands like that? A lot of building and construction?
Well, no. Mostly it's been renovation, I think, because the place was totally established. There were very few lots that you could build something new on unless you tore something down first. Mm-hmm. What I noticed mostly was that there was, on almost every block, a derelict house that was suffering from the Depression years and was sitting there with tall grass and no paint, just as this one was. And you don't see them at all anymore. There is not such a thing as a derelict in a house. Mm-hmm. They're all painted and totally lived in. I think you'd be hard put to find a house for sale even in the area. They're just totally used now. The stores have done a lot of changing. We had quite a few. It was a very busy square when we came here. There were dry goods stores, there were grocery stores, there were clothing stores, record shop. It was a very, very busy place. But the same cry that still goes on for parking spaces was very much so then. And and Newton Center was not very big at all. And they said, well, if we don't get some parking space, all the business is going to go to Newton Center, our nearest competitor. And indeed, the local people really didn't want a lot of parking spaces and a lot of growth, and they sort of sat on it. And Newton Center did grow much faster than we did. And they have been a bigger shopping area ever since. We then went down to a time when there were a lot of empty stores, which I think is always sad. And in the last 10, 15 years, it's burgeoned again. And we've seen a lot of nice new businesses in this way. They're different than we used to have, but they're busy and active. Quite a lot of people. We get complaints about that. Too many in the square. It's too noisy. We do have a little more parking space. They tore down a couple of houses that were beside what used to be Brigham's, and put in a parking lot there, and I think that helped some. But now we don't have our Brigham's either, which was the original Brigham's. It was the very first one of all, with brass fixtures and everything. I never thought they'd do it, but as it became swallowed up, first in one little conglomerate and ever larger ones, it finally, I guess, ceased to be a practical thing. When I first came here, I'm an ice cream freak. When I first came here, I think there were 7 different places in Newton Highlands where you could get ice cream. So we had about 5 drugstores, and they all had soda fountains in those days. And then we had another ice cream store. It was a creamery. I can't remember exactly what creamery, but it was a creamery, and they sold ice cream. And then we had Brigham's. It was quite a selection. Now we have mostly beauty parlors. I don't know what that's an indication of. People are watching their weight and fixing their hair.
Yeah. So, you were here originally from 41 to 45?
Actually, I got married in 45, and then I went away for a while, kept touching base. Mm-hmm. But my husband worked for Stomberg and Webster, and we were transferred around quite a bit, and came back in '53
Mm-hmm.
and decided to stay put.
What made you decide to stay?
A lot of things. We had 4 children at that point, and moving around with 4 children is a real bit of a thing. And we had never really found a place we liked any better. Really, it was the lure of, again, this neighborhood feeling that we always, and the, being able to live in a place that was so near country, so near city, and was itself a village, is very charming.
Mm-hmm.
And we bought a house on Forest Street.
Your husband is from?
No, he's from Rhode Island, actually. And both of us have parents who were born out of the country, so we're very, very new. No, we adopted it mostly because of its particular merits, and in comparison with a lot of other things, because both of our families had moved. His family had moved to Stone and Webster, and mine with Public Health. And so we grew up moving around, and then married and went into Stone and Webster again. I did quite a bit of moving around ourselves, and I came back here.
What is the major entertainment around here? What was it? And what did you do for fun?
What did we do for fun? A lot of it was through the church, for sure. Movies. We went to the movies a lot. There were a lot of movie houses. Strangely enough, there wasn't one in Newton Center, and there is now. There was a big furor. They were going to start to build one across from about where the Lutheran Church is in Newton Center. It never happened. We thought it would be marvelous. It didn't happen. We used to go to the Paramount mostly, I guess. Which, again, you had a lot of buses in those days that connected all these villages. And we could get to Newtonville or West Newton or Waltham or Watertown and go to movies. And that's one of the things we did. Churches had a lot of square dances and suppers, and we did that. Always, of course, again, the charm was that you were just a steam train ride away from symphony and plays.
Did you ever ride the steam train just for fun?
Only once, just for fun. It was going out of business, and we decided to take our children for one last fling, and we all had the little receipts that you used to get from your tickets as we rode just round trip just for fun. But that was the only thing, just to take the kids for a ride, because they hadn't ridden it very much. They were young at that point. I think when that was. It has to be probably in the late 50s somewhere. I can't remember when the train actually went out. It was talked about going out, and then it finally did go, but I can't remember what it was. And then we didn't have anything for a while they built up the tracks before they could put the trolley on it.
If I could ask you another question about women working during the war.
Mm-hmm.
Did a lot of women in this area work?
Oh, yes.
Before and during, after?
No, only during, I think. Well, I'm going to have to just speak from my experience because I can't get into somebody else's shoes, but I know that in my family it was considered, embarrassing to a man to have his wife work. I mean, a man was supposed to be capable of supporting his family. And I remember that I had been working when we got married and was going to continue to work, and Art was going to go to school. He wanted to take his MBA. He was already an engineer at that point. And his father was upset. He was just so upset. He kept saying to me, "But son, you're a married man. You have a wife to support. You're not going to sit at home and let your wife support you." And that was really the feeling people had. And I don't think that was unique, but I know that was the angle that people around me were coming from. For a woman to be a career woman took a great deal of courage on her part. She had to be quite dedicated because there were so many obstacles. Getting the education to begin with was going to be an obstacle. I thought of being a doctor, but I never went beyond getting the the background. That's why I ended up being a chemistry major, because I had all the science background. But I never went back to medical school after I got married. It took more determination than I had to do it.
And your husband's parents, did they ever live in Newton Highlands?
No.
No, they didn't.
No. We met at school. He was going to Louisiana State and I was going to Tulane, and we met down there in Louisiana. And no, it was just a fluke that our paths should cross at all. He roomed with a boy I went to high school with. And we were introduced that way. No, he has no connection, except that he loved it. The very first time he came to visit me, he was in the service. We weren't even engaged then. And he got off the train in Newton Highlands Station and looked down Lincoln Street, which in those days was totally lined with elm trees on both sides. So that when you got off the train and came up the hill, you walked into this archway. It was the most beautiful street you can imagine. And he just fell in love with it. And he said, someday I'm going to live in it.
Really?
And we did. That's how we happened to, I guess, get our start. Then, of course, you're talking about women in industry. When I was in school, in the 40s, the recruiters were on campus all the time. If you had any math, if you had any science, you were recruited immediately into the industry. And if it wasn't that, it was the services, the wax, the waves. They were all looking for you to get out there and do your part. So the thing had quickly turned over to where it was not only not an embarrassment, but it was something to be very proud of, that you were to go out and work. And people did. They surely did. And we were then having trouble finding women to do the jobs they thought of as traditional women's jobs, because they were out earning more money, being Rosie the Riveter or whatever. Lots of people worked in the plants, just doing factory work, because again, the men had been recruited out, and they needed them there. But it was strange then to, two things happened. I got married and went to the South. And the South's position on women working is quite different from the North. Always they're much more conservative. And I went down there and told them I wanted a job. Went to the employment office. Told them I had been working as a research chemist, and that I would like a job. And the man just laughed at me and he said, "Lady, the work's over. If I were you, I'd get a job teaching or I'd learn how to type." Right out, just that was it. I was so disillusioned because I had completely overlooked the fact that the reason I had my job was because of that. And the war was not over.
So when the men started coming home, the women were losing their jobs?
Oh yes, indeed they were. Yeah. And many of the men went off to work with the promise of their job being kept for them at home. And so if a woman filled it, she could be sure she'd be replaced when he came back, which I guess is fair. But what you had there was that beginning of that turnover where men had been traditionally the ones who got the jobs because they were the wage earners, and now all of a sudden it was beginning to turn. It was slow, and it didn't happen all at once, but you could begin to see that women were not going to all go home and be housewives now. They just weren't going to do it, and they weren't all going to be secretaries and teachers either. They had been exposed to a lot of more exciting things. And they'd been given promotions that they never would have thought of having before. And some of them had them taken away from them, which was very difficult. But we've certainly come a long way from that, haven't we? There are very few women who would think that they shouldn't go to college because there isn't room for them there. That was the thought. If you were thinking in terms of the 30s and early 40s, not everybody could afford to go to college, so the family planned to send a boy to school. They couldn't send everybody, they'd send a boy. And my father wouldn't let me work part-time in the summers because he said I'd be taking the food off some family's table if I took a part-time job. So I had no job training at all until I got out to a full-time job.
Wow.
See how that's changed.
Wish my father would tell me.
No, I wanted so badly because all my friends were going out and they were getting jobs in the 5 and 10 cent stores, or they were waitressing, or they were doing something. And my father wouldn't let me do it because too many men had to have those jobs to do nothing but just put food on the table. So that was, you see, where you were having to move from to get to the place where a woman could be a career woman and have a full-time job. And of course now we've come into an economy where you need to have 2 fully employed people in a family to swing the bills, which seems very unfair. I don't know which came first, the 2 jobs or the increased costs. I don't know. Did one cause the other? I have no way of knowing. But I know that now in Newton Highlands, where these old houses in the 40s were selling, the highest property that my folks looked at was about $8,000 in 1941-42. And they only paid $55 for this one. So they bought it because it was the cheaper of the ones they had looked at.
Wow.
I know. It's just, you cannot equate it to anything at all. I know. So, and I know that my next door neighbor, the young boy there, was in the service. He married a girl in France, and she came home here to live with his Sicilian parents, which was difficult because one spoke mostly Italian with a little broken English, and the other spoke nothing but French. But she did very well, and she got her job over in the textile mills in Upper Falls. So I think probably quite a few people did work in those mills in Upper Falls too from here. And we had a neighbor who was a salesman for a Remington typewriter company. All different sorts of jobs. But where this was not a particularly industrial village, and I suppose I hadn't really too much insight into that.
Right. I read a little description of Newton Highlands, and there was a fairly good-sized article about the aqueducts.
The water systems, which we use as jogging tracks and walking places.
Yeah, I read about that. That's really interesting.
We're crisscrossed with them. I don't really think that any of them supply us with water locally, but they go through us on their way to other locations. There's one runs right behind us here that we walk. And it's nice because they own a fair amount of land on either side of the actual aqueduct itself, so that it's open. Goes right through. I once saw a map. The Boy Scouts were doing the water conservation project, and they had maps of all these. And it was interesting how many, as you say, how many of them there were crisscrossed through.
And if I could ask you, if you know what the political affiliations are in Newton Highlands, like are most people Republicans or?
I don't know if there are any Republicans except me. Mostly they're Democrats, quite liberal. When we first came here, I have to say that I believe it was quite different. I believe the older people were more Republican in this particular area. And across the street, Mr. Goddard was a constant prohibition candidate on the ticket for mayor. He never made it, but his name was on the ticket a lot. We used to be able to tell who was Republican and who was Democratic by who got the globe. They would Democrats, and who got the old Boston Herald, and they were the Republicans. And you could slice them up that way. But that's not so anymore either, where Boston Herald is now the Herald Advertiser, and it's quite a different, it's a Hearst publication now, so you can't tell anything about that now. But I would say they were primarily liberal and Democratic. They certainly are very politically active and involved in this community. We do have the Newton Area Council. I believe we're the only village that has that. I know we were the first that did. And it is a political entity and a voice for the Highlands area. And our Merchants Association is quite active. They've been certainly fighting to save Hyde School. Now they've enlarged their fight to save village schools in general, because the feeling is so strong that the village concept is being destroyed. And you see that it has been. I'm sure that if I were a city planner for the city of Newton, that I could see that in order to get this lump of, 13 villages to work as a city, we'd have to get it more centralized and get rid of some of these individual things. But as a village dweller, I don't like it at all that that's what they want to do. The talk is, of course, that we can't afford village libraries, and they've been talking for some time about building a central library in some new location. It's in Newton Corner at this point, but it's very tired and crowded, and so they've been a battle going maybe 10 years now about what they would do with the library system, but it does seem to include closing the branch libraries. You see, some years ago they took away our individual franking on our letters. It used to be that when you put a letter in your local post box, that they franked it with Highlands. And of course now it's all Boston. You don't have your individual ones. And now it's the schools. They've closed Hamilton, and they've closed Emerson. These were our schools that were like Upper Falls and Lower Falls, and they were the central schools. And now it's Hyde in our village. And because it is a very politically vocal community, they have fought to try to save it. Because it does decentralize your village. And people who have lived near the village because of the school will move away. They really will move away. People will move where the schools are. So we see that as a threat.
And what about churches? You were saying church dances used to be a big thing. Was there a lot of religious unity in the Highlands?
Well, we have two churches in Newton Highlands. We have an Episcopal Church, St. Paul's, and we have a Congregational, which is one I belong to, the Newton Highlands Congregational, which is UCC Church. Then there are two Catholic churches nearby, one in Upper Falls and one in Newton Center, that would take care of the Catholic parishioners. I think that we're pretty strongly probably Protestant and or non-church people in this area. It's probably pretty typical of the professional level of people. We do have a good supply of both Catholics and Jewish people as well, but I think probably in this particular area the Protestants perhaps have.
And was it like that back in the 40s too?
I think that they used to figure we were pretty evenly distributed, about a third of each of the main. But just the very fact that the local churches are both Protestant churches, I think indicates that historically it must always have been pretty predominantly Protestant. Just right in the central area. If you get out a ways at all, if you go on the other side of Route 9, it's predominantly Jewish, for instance. Closer to Newton Center, I think you find more Catholic people. Nearer their churches, I guess. I don't know why the difference.
Well, is there anything that you'd like to say about Newton Highlands in the 40s? Anything? Fond remembrance of something?
Well, I think that the very thing that I liked about it then, when we very first moved here, the friendliness of the neighbors and the helpfulness and the closeness of all the services and being so close to Boston, which had everything in it, actually. Because I liked all of that. And I still like the fact that it's a village. That's outstanding. Thing I like about the Highlands. It's a village, but it's a city. Yes, but you can get in your car and drive west, and in no time you'll think you're in the countryside.
Mm-hmm.
And we had come here from the south, from Texas actually, where you could drive for miles and miles and never see anything that looked the least bit different from what you just left. So it was charming to be able to go from village to city to country in such short period of time. I think these beautiful old Victorian houses are charming too.
They're gorgeous.
Just absolutely. I don't know of any place that has so many gorgeous Victorian houses
Mm-hmm.
all in one place.
Mm-hmm.
That's an added charm. And I guess that's really all I can think of.
It's been very helpful.